So another way we do this is chapter and individual standards. So I touched on honor board before, but just to reiterate the point of our honor board is there to support these women and really make sure that they are living up to what Delta Gamma standards are, but also what their individual standards are. We often do this by kind of asking the women what they're hoping to get out of Delta Gamma and how we can help them get there. So we really want to make sure that they're getting the most out of us, but also putting the most into DG. We also do bylaws reviews and really just make sure that every woman in the chapter is having a point to comment on our bylaws, make changes as they see fit, and is approving of our bylaws. So we bring them to the chapter with any edits that our chapter management team may have brought. We allow our chapter to make edits, and then we always make sure to vote at the end because we believe that everyone should have a voice in these things since they will be kind of the policies that make our chapter what they are. Another way that we kind of live out chapter and individual standards is by having mandatory attendance at least one PanHel meeting a year. I know that this is something that has really been positive over the past year. When we started it, Rachel actually decided to run for VP PanHel and take on this position because she realized how much PanHel kind of makes a difference. And I know we had several other women who ran for the position as well because they got to go to these meetings and realize what is occurring outside of our chapter, because we have so many people who are very involved inside Delta Gamma, but we wanted to create at least a way for them to become more involved in the entire Greek life community. And then also we do an alcohol presentation / discussion with our new members early on when they get activated, I'm trying to think of the right word, when they kind of join our chapter, so that we can have an open discussion with them about why we cannot drink with new members, why kind of like how alcohol plays into Greek life, and why that you should be forming bonds with your sisters that are not based around alcohol but are based around values and are based around common interests, so that you are forming like true friendships and not just ones where they're your drinking buddy. And we think these conversations not only help the new members feel kind of more welcome and comfortable with having these types of open conversations, but really just make sure that everyone understands why we have these policies and they're not just because we want to be strict.
Our last theme was sustainability. And sustainability and environmental awareness as a whole is something that has not been a huge focus of our chapter in the past, but that we have developed some smaller programs and are still working to help increase that focus. For instance, one sister saw that Sigma Nu had created a composting pile and got us a bin and then started composting to help increase their efforts. We also, as a house, saw a need for more recycling bins and better ways to recycle, so we were able to get those recycling bins through the House to Home initiative and now have them labeled so that we each know what goes where. And lastly, one thing that we think is very unique to our chapter is that throughout the school year last year, we were able to collect 600 pairs of eyeglasses and donate them to the Cleveland Sight Center. So we were able to take something that was being unused and give it to someone who couldn't afford to have their own eyeglasses. They're all pretty small steps, but they are just small steps in our continuing effort to increase sustainability.
Are there any questions?
So I think something I was thinking about with like the Human Dignity Workshop and a lot of things that you're doing, I think that you're learning a lot. And I don't know, I was wondering, going forward, like, has that produced any kind of changes that you want to make as a chapter? Like, how is that impacting your operations at all?
I think it's kind of impacted the way we just do things in general, how we interact with each other, because I think one of the big focuses we've had is what the difference between friendship and sisterhood is, because you can really kind of like be friends with anyone. You can say hi to them on campus, you can be like, how's your day going? But being a true sister is accepting them for like who they are and wanting to make them a better person, to make you a better person, and also being there to support them through any conversations they want to have. And I think having these types of discussions as a whole chapter has created that one-on-one interaction that's really improved, and also just kind of created a better feel for what we do at any of our events and how our sisters take that back to people who they interact with, whether they're outside of Delta Gamma and even outside of the Case Western community. And I know we've had a lot of women just kind of talk about like, oh, I had this conversation today and I was more prepared for it, or I went into this conversation with like a better viewpoint because of the things we've done in chapter.
Cool.
So, from all the things that you're doing, how has that maybe yielded you a better recruitment of a diverse community for your chapter? And, maybe even have given examples. You talked about going to different cultural group events. Is is that a place where you often also try to share who you are as an organization so that you can recruit differently? Particularly, I'm curious, I know you mentioned the Asian American Alliance and Kismet. I'm curious about, and Alliance, I'm curious about work that you might have done with African American Society or African Students Association as well.
I think that it helps that our chapter members are so close to these people that we are able to bring them into recruitment and really kind of know them better. So when we're going through our membership selection, we can talk more diversely about them. But I also know we make it a big point, I think this is something for us to touch on, that like our vice president of membership and our entire recruitment team tries to make sure that during membership selection, some of the big positive points are like what they are involved with, how they would bring diversity to our chapter, and really kind of like how they can impact those types of conversations so that we're not just being like, they're a great person I know, but they are great because of these like round, or like they become a round individual. If that makes sense.
Another thing is a lot of our sisters have leadership positions in these organizations, and they might not necessarily know the potential new members, but the potential members know them. And so that's been a positive influence too. So you may come in, you may have a potential new member who says, oh, like I know so-and-so because she's the president of this club. And so that's also been a positive influence on recruiting.
Sorry, one more thing. You also talked about how we didn't mention anything with like the African American Society, anything like that. I know we did have several sisters like involved with the We Belong Here movement, and I know it's a big goal of our Director of Social Awareness to kind of get collaboration happening with these groups, whether that's like mixers that don't just fall with Greek life communities, but that fall with other organizations, and to really kind of like push that so that we're not just being like, oh hey, you're in that organization, talk about it, but really like working with those organizations as a whole.
I think that brings up a good question. Is, I mean, where do you see Delta Gamma going in the next year? Like, when you're presenting next year, like, what are the new things that you want to say that you were able to do, and what do those initiatives look like?
I'll talk a little bit. So, sorry. The Director of Social Awareness and I have been like really kind of trying to branch these things out, and I know like everyone in our chapter really has been. And I think kind of our goal for where we would be next year is to be able to say that we've had collaboration like directly, like mixers, or put on events or had speakers come in from like all of these different types of organizations. And I think we're trying to bring in more like involved speakers, whether those are people on campus, or we have a program in Delta Gamma as a national called like pro speakers, so they're professional speakers who speak on certain topics, to come and talk to like the campus, so that Delta Gamma is bringing that to the campus as well. And I think that's kind of one way we want to bring like the diversity and kind of more cultural component to things, as well as just kind of getting our like Woman of the Week off the ground and kind of being able to reflect upon how everything in our lives goes back to Article 2, because our Article 2 statement includes scholarship, individual growth, cultural and educational scholarship, just to specify, and kind of like being a supportive friend to everyone in the organization. So I think if we can do that at every single one of our events or every single one of our chapter discussions, that would make everyone kind of realize what its importance is. I guess other things.
On a service front or philanthropy front, very related to that, I think as a chapter we've done a really great job at getting ourselves more educated about Service for Sight and like what we are working for, but I think that we could do a better job still at making our philanthropy events more cause-based, so that like the general consensus on campus is that, oh, those Delta Gammas, they work for Service for Sight, which is this, not just like knowing the name, but understanding what that name means to us.
I'm sorry that I missed a large part of your community service and learning, and it sounds like you've done a lot with implementing more educational events, like Emma was saying, with philanthropy events that you're hosting. Can you talk about how you guys, and maybe you already did, so I apologize if I missed it, but how you process your service experiences? Do you do reflection? How do you have that happen?
That's something that we've really been trying to focus more on, especially through the GEM model. Amy and I worked with that and realized that it was a weakness of our chapter, but that one of the like small steps we did is through our service like hours completion form, we've added questions that require more thought, and it's like mandatory to require or to fill it out. So like that's something that we each have to do. But also we are encouraging sisters that if they've had a cool service experience, whether it's through a DG hour or a Greek life hour, that they like stand up in front of the chapter and tell us with just like a minute or so, but just so that everybody else can know. And then I don't know if you were here when we talked about the like note card activity, sorry for anyone else, but we had everyone fill out questions about what they were passionate about and get their interests on a note card, and we collaborated them and then tried to get resources out to the whole chapter so that if people didn't want to go serve by themselves, they could do it with a sister, and so that they could see that like your passions are very aligned with some sort of nonprofit in this area, that it's not hard to find something that you would be willing to work for. So that's just another thing that we've been trying to do to encourage people to go above and beyond the 5 hours.
Thanks.
So I think part of the social justice piece is trying to understand your communities and what your community needs, and kind of the rights of the people within that, right? And I was wondering, what issues do you see on our campus or in the Cleveland area or other areas that you think that Delta Gamma is either currently working or would like to work towards solving?
Yeah. So I think we really kind of appreciated where like the CWRU Cares initiative came from, because part of like our social inclusion human dignity workshop was to make sure that everyone was being supported, and I think that we didn't often branch into the different components that the CWRU Cares kind of like week has now come out of. So I think that's a big part of just making sure that everyone understands that what we want to bring isn't just like we like different cultures and we like this and we want to support you. It's like what those specific portions can be, and that you can talk to anyone in our chapter. You can talk to Honor Board. You can talk to our chapter management team about whatever you're going through. So I think some of the needs that our campus currently could have is just bringing back respect for one another. And I think this is something that has really started to occur within our chapter, and now we're trying to push it like outside of our chapter so that we are working with organizations or working with movements like the We Belong Here movement or CWRU Cares or whatever it may be, so that everyone on our campus is feeling respected and no one is saying like bad words about other people. And then to kind of go into the community, I think we just kind of focus on like supporting the community of Cleveland Site Center and things like that. And I think a lot of our members are trying to kind of find new ways to do that as well, because we don't often reach out to the community outside of CASE. We're kind of caught in our bubble. So I think we're still searching for how to do that.
We're looking to adopt the Cleveland Site Center preschool. Each year we're allowed to give half of the money we raise through Anchor Slash or our Pancake Night for Sight to any Service for Sight related organization. And so what we've chosen to do the past couple of years is give half our money to the preschool there. And so we're working towards this adoption process, and what's great is every time we give them money, they tell us what they use it for and how it helps them.
Any other questions? Anything else? Cool. Thank you.
Thank you.